A fly love. Say what? A fly love. Say what? A fly love. Say what? Welcome to Pick and Roll Podcast. What is this, number 4?
This is number 5.
Number 5?
That's kind of a landmark.
It's number 5?
That's number 5. This is kind of a landmark occasion.
Oh, that's number 5.
Number 5. Yeah, that's a small victory.
My name is Roderick Wallace, Rod Wallace. My grandfather used to call me Roger Wallace.
Yikes.
Rogers
Wallace.
Rod Wallace, whatever. Coming to you from pickandrollpodcast.com. We'll be up soon.
That's right. Check that out. This is Quentin Barrett. You can hit us up at PAR Podcast on Twitter. pickandrollpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, we will have pickandrollpodcast.com sometime here in the next few days.
Yes.
And we have to do some alterations to some of our other social networking endeavors. But we are out here. We are available. So get back with us.
Yes, we are. Also, shout outs to Double Negative People, doubleNegativePeople.com. Just a couple of quick shout outs to the Collie.com.
Absolutely.
They had a fantastic sample contest this last week. I was a participant. I got minimal votes, but I'm honest with myself enough to say that I need to step my game up, and that's cool. I don't mind that in the least. What else is going on? Shout outs to everybody that's out there. So for today, we're going to be switching speeds a little bit, and as you know, can we talk about why we call it pick and roll for a minute? Because I don't want people to get too confused.
Sure. People have been visiting. You know what? Actually, a great deal of appreciation to the people that are visiting the YouTube channel. Pick and Roll Podcast is. I've been surprised, really, about how many people have been actually viewing the videos and then viewing them weeks after they were recorded. Like our number one, the episode 1 is still getting views. So that's pretty cool.
Fantastic
to me, anyway. But we chose Pick and Roll because if you've listened to any one of our shows, I guess you would have to listen to more than one. One of the things that we do is we pick topics and just kind of roll with it. And yeah, that sounds kind of cheesy, but that's the truth. And it comes from a way that myself and Mr. Wallace over here have kind of discussed things over the years.
Yeah. A
lot of you all, I'm pretty sure you have friends, cousins, acquaintances, or whatever that you get up with, and you guys just kind of have a conversation, and things just kind of go to this, to that, to this topic, to that topic, and you just kind of rolling and flowing. Well, me and Rod have been doing this for a long time, and we just thought that the opinions and the ideas that we flesh out between him and I resonate.
Yes.
And what we're finding out is that they do indeed resonate. So we bring to you the Pick and Roll Podcast.
Yes.
Also, kind of, maybe a little bit of a chest beat. The Pick and Roll, when it's ran right, it's damn near unstoppable.
It is. I was watching a video of a Gary Payton thing with my dad yesterday on NBA TV. I guess they was just talking about his career or whatnot. And he said that the toughest guy he played against was not Jordan. It was John Stockton.
Absolutely. You hear those testaments all the time.
Yeah, and they ran the pick and roll to death. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about a few different issues that are going on. There's some sideline things that we might touch on. We want to talk about the situation involving Michael Sam and Tony Dungy, who has since, I don't want to say recanted his statement, but couched his statement a little bit. A little bit of a fantasy football primer, just a little bit. As basketball will quiet down, we're still waiting for what's going to happen with Kevin Love, but we do know that now that Andrew Wiggins has signed his rookie contract, he can't be dealt at least for a month. And I've been an advocate for them waiting anyway at this point. Wait till Christmas time. Because you have time. Are you going to get an offer that's going to be more audacious than the number 1 pick in the draft this last year? I don't think so.
Nor will any move put you in the finals.
Any move?
No.
Any
move.
Minnesota, for Minnesota.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Neither one of those scenarios is going to put you square in the finals next year. So you might as well wait and see what you have.
We also want to talk. We want to do a quick album review of Cormega's new album, Mega Philosophy, and kind of put that in the context of what old guys mean to rap these days. What the old guard is.
You kind of springing that on me.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, but it was just what I was thinking about as I was listening to it. So we'll get to that point. Any thoughts out there that we're not going to cover today? Anything you want to just touch base about?
At some point, I think after the fire dies down, we will probably get together and discuss at length. I think we should probably dedicate a real good block of time. So we're not going to do that this evening, but we should dedicate a block of time to the street harassment discussion and get some details there, because there's a lot of voices on that topic still, and we're into like almost a month worth of that discussion. I don't know if we necessarily need to discuss the situation going on in Gaza, just some of the atrocities that are making the news. There were some pictures that I saw on my timeline today that are just devastating. So we need to maybe discuss some of those, just to bring some people into the know that are not following that story.
Okay. Ray Rice, I wanted to touch base about that a little bit. So let's go into that real quick today. For those of you who don't know, today Ray Rice was given a suspension of 2 games for the infamous mannequin dragging that he did at the casino. I didn't see the video of what actually happened in the elevator. I've heard that that's out there.
Well, yeah, I think it's out there in selective spaces, but do we all have access to the full video, right?
That's
some
my
of that
question.
has been redacted, right?
Some of it has, but needless to say, we all saw with horror Ray Rice. What is he, like 5'10", like 220 or so?
Something like that.
Built like that wall right there.
Yes, he is.
Dragging his ethnically ambiguous girlfriend outside. And he got 2 games. There's been some strong opinions on both sides about what the proper penalty should have been. What? Ethnically ambiguous? Okay, let me clarify that, because we might have to talk about that later. Ethnically ambiguous means that you are of an ethnic background that is not instantly definable. You might be mixed, and these days it's getting
passing rod.
Right. And these days it's getting a little bit more difficult to really quantify what is really happening. So, I just call them ethnically ambiguous. Ethnically ambiguous women dominate entertainment and dominate sports side pieces, as Drake put it at the SBC.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah,
that's
ethnically
awesome.
His ethnically ambiguous fiance turned wife, and she ardently defended him in court. He got 2 games. Meanwhile, there's people that smoking bud getting 4 games. So is this a strike against Goodell's leadership? What do you think about that?
Definitely a strike against its consistency, and it. Well, the idea at the beginning was that he was going to get 4 and then appeal. So for them to back down off of the 4-game suspension, of course we will never know, because the NFL is a closed door conversation.
Sure.
What made the change from the expected 4 games down to 2 games? I'm not necessarily a fan of comparing his offense to weed smoking or to tattoos being sold in the for Terrell Pryor and all. That's what's been going on in the timeline, on the Twitter timeline all day today. What I think happened here was Goodell maybe tried to curry favor with the players union, because we all must remember there are still some very important negotiations that are coming up here in the near future.
Yeah.
And I think you will begin to see decisions come from Goodell dealing with penalties for players' personal lives that will kind of ride that wave. I read an article that referees are going to be asked to call more penalties, right?
Did they call the nigga penalty last year on anybody?
I don't think so, but there's going to be some playing around with the parameters this NFL season. It's going to piss a lot of people off.
The nigga penalty.
It's going to satisfy a lot of people, and I think it's all leading up to, and it's a reckoning for what happened to the NFL Players Union, the last negotiation.
Okay.
They're not going to take another L like that. And Goodell knows that what they will come with the next time will be something in the way of a lockout.
It'll be interesting to see what, especially what
how
contracts and things are going to develop too.
This is a chess match, and I think Goodell is trying to soften the players' union,
right?
Leading up to next negotiations.
Right.
That's what I believe, and so he's pandering basically. That's what I think it is.
Well, I think that the consequence is what it is. Are there different rules that exist for the NFL versus some of the other sports? Immediately, I heard comparisons being drawn between Silver and him. And Silver hasn't dealt with a true to life player issue, to my knowledge. Right. I mean, he's been obviously at the forefront of the whole Sterling mess, which is a complete mess. Right. Seeing as though Doc Rivers said he would leave the team, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that the contract negotiations will be interesting, and I think that they're going to hear the outcries of the public that's going to encourage them to do things a little bit differently in terms of discipline.
I disagree there, and this is why Roger Goodell can do this. The NFL does not have to be accountable to the public, and here's why. Football is religion, and so there's never going to be a time where the fan base, especially in a city like Baltimore, is not going to show up. It's not going to happen. Nobody's walking away from football. It's not going to happen because it's a culture, it's a religion. They're not going to stop going to the games, and we're not going to stop watching them.
So the public outcry can be what it is, but it will be limited by the people who really don't give a damn.
Right, and I'm saying that in as much of a definite tone as I can.
Okay.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You forget it. There's no way the fans are going to suddenly grab a hold of some sort of moral compass and say, you know what, I can't support a team or support an organization, support a league that deals softly with domestic violence. Not going to happen. Never in a million years.
Turning a blind eye is something that I think we all do to a degree with sports and entertainment. I think for every incident that we hear about that is broadcast in the media, there's hundreds of incidents that occur on a daily basis that involve the conduct of athletes and entertainers and things. And I think at the end of the day, they are held to a different set of rules. So it will be interesting to see what happens. So let's talk about Tony Dungy. Let's talk about the situation involving Michael Sam. But first, let's back up. First of all, do you think that Michael Sam, his draft position was affected by his stance about homosexuality?
No doubt.
Without question.
100%.
Without question. And I think Tony Dungy just tried to, I don't think that he tried to bring it to light. I think he may have been asked a question or something about it. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, do you agree?
Well, with Tony Dungy's statement, we can eliminate Michael Sam from the discussion.
Okay. Why is that?
We take the name off the jersey, right?
Okay.
Because what Tony Dungy tried to make it about was being distraction to the team. Okay.
He did.
We know who Tony Dungy is. He's a known commodity around the NFL, in sports culture, in celebrity culture. We know Tony Dungy is a Christian man. Mm-hmm. We know that he is a proponent of Christian values. So we can probably pretty much glean from his history what his view on homosexuality probably is. Okay. But that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about the distraction. So Tony Dungy's comments would be totally hypocritical. Right? Yeah. He was a supporter of Michael Vick. He was a supporter of Tim Tebow. He was a supporter of Keyshawn Johnson. These are all enormous distractions to their respective football teams during their height. And Tony Dungy was supporters of them. So if it's about distractions, you shouldn't have a problem with this sort of distraction. Uh-oh. That's Keith.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. That's Keith.
I don't even know if they hear that. But I think what we first need to do, we need to make sure that we create the designation about Dungy's comments. They weren't necessarily casting him down as, or Tony did not try to put himself in a homophobic light.
No, he did not.
He was talking about the distraction, but it's curious to me how could he defend Tim Tebow in the past, but then talk about the distraction that Michael Sam causes, because the distraction was there for both of them.
Right. That's why I say take the names off the back of the jersey, eliminate our emotional attachment to the players, and just deal with Tony Dungy's comments in and of themselves. It was a hypocritical statement.
So what do you think is going to happen with Michael Sam if Michael Sam makes the team? First of all,
right. That's number one.
And so it leads to a couple of questions. How can I say this without getting in trouble?
Getting in trouble? We're on a podcast.
Right, we are on a podcast. I don't work for Clear Channel. Michael Sam makes the team. Here's scenario one. Michael Sam makes the team. What does that locker room look like involving his treatment or whatnot? I mean, because there's a lot of, I think that there's a lot of people who think that people who play in the NFL are barbarians and they're not in tune with what is happening in society. But here's the second one. Will there be, if the Rams cut him,
right?
Will there be an issue with that? Somebody will have an issue with it. Let's just put that out. Somebody's going to have an issue.
It will be minimal. It will be minimal. And I'm going to tell you why. Jeff Fisher. There's two things that we're forgetting about the St. Louis Rams. One, we're forgetting about the assessment of the team the day of draft night. We forget that draft night, when we found out that he was going to be drafted to the Rams, what was the first thing that we understood about the Rams? They are linebacker heavy. They were literally loaded with, not to say proven players, but second and third year players at that position. So it was going to be difficult for him to make that team anyway. Number two, Jeff Fisher is one of the most well-respected men in all of the NFL.
Straight up and down, like 6 o'clock.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When Jeff Fisher stands up for something, typically the league gets behind it. And he's been he wasn't part of the union, but he's been a player rep for X amount of years. This is a guy who's in tune with the NFL. Number three, Tony Dungy and a lot of people inside the NFL and outside the NFL are pretending that the NFL has not been aware of who's been gay for 50 years. The NFL and all sports know that there are gay players in their leagues. Mm-hmm. It's just about being open and letting the curtain, the shroud being ripped away about their teams, about these individual organizations. The brotherhood, the cloth, the shield. The league knows. They've known forever who's gay and who's not, and they've protected it. And locker rooms have operated. Some operated very well, some not operated very well for whatever reasons. But if it has something to do with somebody being gay, we would never know, because that's the way the secrecy is surrounded around these teams.
There's a tier of protection. That's definitely true.
They know. Michael Sam being an openly homosexual man in the Rams locker room, one, he's not the 100th or maybe even the 1000th in the league to be an openly gay player. It's just open to the rest of us now. We're the problem. It's not the NFL. The NFL has executed this and policed this probably since its inception. We are the problem because we are projecting our morals and values onto these teams, onto these coaches, onto the commissioner, onto the players. Some of our more archaic types, believe we know what goes on in the NFL locker room.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Even though we ain't ever played a day. Right? You don't know. You have no clue. And Tony Dungy is pretending like homosexuality isn't a part of the NFL. You see what I'm saying? Because he's couching these statements, he's coding his language. Other people who have spoken out on either side of the issue are pretending that gay players are not a known commodity in professional sports.
It's the same as known drug users, known wife beaters. There's a level of protection that's involved.
Right.
I guess I'm curious about the depth to which this was a very calculated move by the NFL from, I mean, even looking at where he ended up getting drafted to, because like you said, they didn't need any more linebackers. And in the combine, it says that he was too slow to play linebacker and too small to play DN. So here you had his tweener. He was Defensive Player of the Year in a league that was based on, the SEC is based around a lot of speed, but allegedly at the combine, he didn't necessarily show it. But he's in St. Louis. He went to Missouri. There's already a level of support that's right there with him. Was this a calculated move by the NFL based on the fact that he announced that he was gay? I'm really curious about that. I don't think that anything that they do is by accident. It's too much money involved.
Nothing. And that's the way they've operated definitely since Goodell's been at the helm.
Very calculated
moves. And Jeff Fisher is a very important figure in this entire discussion. Because like I said, the level of respect that man carries into any room he walks in is going to have, tangible currency if he does get cut. If he becomes a key player on the defense, Jeff Fisher will still have to step in and say, hey, what did he say what was last week? He said he's been no distraction at all. That's the
right guy.
That should be the end of the discussion to me.
Period.
If Jeff Fisher says, no problem here, then what are you talking about? It's the fans. We're the problem.
Any collateral damage for Dungy, you think?
No.
No.
Again, game one, this will seem like 1995. After game one, after the first Sunday Night Football, this will seem like 1995. Somebody might try to make him, talk about it. He might have to go on Rome or, and discuss it a couple of times. But as far as making headlines, no way.
Yeah, but Goodell is very calculated. And I truly believe that this entire thing was something that was carefully orchestrated. But, in the same token, back to Ray Rice, him giving the hand of God to his girlfriend, his fiance. I don't know how that decision came about, and it seems to be somewhat uncalculated. So, I'm really curious about that.
I'm curious to see how that's going to play with the fans in Baltimore game one. Even though I have, obviously very clear ideas how I think it's going to play, I'm curious to see how that's going to.
Game 3, excuse you. Game 3.
No, game 1. I want to see what they're going to do game 1.
Do you think that people will protest and things of that nature?
That's what I said.
People protest every game something.
I want to see what they're going to do.
Right. Let them run for 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, and everybody will shut up.
It'll be like 1995. We never knew you.
Right. So this whole conversation is a great segue into a discussion about fantasy football. And we'll be talking about fantasy football from week to week to week to week. Hopefully we'll be able to schedule our taping to be able to help you with your picks a little bit. Fantasy football is a great passion of mine. Shout outs to my man Beam, my man Dan, because I've only been playing since like 04, 05. So let's begin by talking about, and I don't even know if you want to say this, but what is your
how do you draft? Everybody, this is the only discussion people can have right now. Okay, so now I typically play in money leagues with family members.
Bread leagues. Let's call them bread leagues because you put up major bread. I don't put up bread like that.
Okay, we play in money leagues with mostly family members. Okay, and we are spread out across the nation, so there's very little conversation between your opponents.
Right.
All right, so you have an opportunity. You don't have an opportunity to know what a guy's thinking or a gal.
What's the league called? Does the league have a name?
Oh, it was the Midwest, whatever the hell else. I don't remember right now. It changes.
Shout out to the old school G League that I'm in, and the G's and Hustlers League. I'm a part of. I'm actually the commissioner of the G's and Hustlers League.
I might be looking for a league this year too. Hey, I'm not sure if we're gonna get.
We always got room. We always got room.
So what happens every year is we always mix newbies and some of us old heads, right? And so we think that we can always take advantage of the newbies, but there's so much information about fantasy football out there right now. They're basically drafting for you. So the way that I draft is I draft with trends, right? Because fantasy football for me is essentially gambling, and you have to study the trends.
Okay.
So this year, drafting running back heavy early is not necessarily going to pay you the same dividends as you will if you have a shot at big arms or big hands. It's not going to pay you those same dividends because NFL football teams are starting to give premier back status to moderately known commodities out of the backfield, right? So we only have maybe 2 or 3 superstar running backs. And so do you take Arian Foster with your number 1, Adrian Peterson, these guys that are good for 1,200 and, you know, they may get in double-digit touchdowns, they may not. Okay. Or do you take Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning? Right. That's more of a lock in this league, okay? Only because of the nature of the league, the defense hasn't necessarily caught up to the offense. After 2001, St. Louis greatest show on turf, right? What did we see the very next year? We saw defenses going to jam coverage. It was Ty Law's league, right? So the defenses hasn't necessarily caught up to this Wild West, this just, you know, gunslinging offenses. And so what we're seeing is a lot of throwing, a lot of multiple receivers.
A lot of quick screens.
A lot of quick screens, a lot of Wes Welker routes.
Wes Welker, Oz Hakeem used to run the heck out of
right.
those
So so you're going to stick with your big arms first. If you have a couple of hands that you can count on, so you know, Calvin put up a record for, you know,
great numbers,
but
fantastic.
He's getting old. So who's
Calvin is getting old.
Calvin's getting old. So who's the guy? Demaryius Thomas. You want to look at those guys. Josh Gordon was going to be the guy, but you know. Anyway,
not quite.
There are guys that
who's throwing him the ball.
Right.
How long will it be before Manziel is starting?
Well, he's got about week 4.
Week 4.
Week 4. Cleveland's ready for. They're ready for the media, bro. It's time. They gotta start. They gotta do it.
Yeah.
So look for your big hands early. I would not start my draft with a barrel of running backs this year. Can't do it. Now, depending on how big your league is, right?
Right.
I play in a 12, 15 team league. You get the middle of the order, you know, you may be in trouble.
You know, I've been in PPR leagues my whole career, like my whole time playing fantasy football. We've always been built around. Oh, sorry about that. That's twice. We've always been PPR leagues. Point for reception, point for 10 yards. So the value is kind of stretched out. The value has always been kind of stretched out, and you know, I've seen wide receivers and tight ends go in the first round based on that. For me, I'm always the guy that drafts my first quarterback really late, because there's not enough, statistically speaking, there's not enough discrepancy between the great guys and the good guys.
Fantasy wise.
If you're not getting Breeze, Manning, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. That's basically it right now.
You know, if you're not getting those kind of players, I'm not taking. I wouldn't take Kaepernick in the first.
Not last year, no.
Because there's not a lot of discrepancy. But in terms of running backs, I've always been a believer that running backs that get the touches, as well as have the ability to catch out of the backfield, always will have more value. Always will have more value in my league, in PPR leagues, like a LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, yeah, Shady's top 3 right now.
Oh my gosh, LaShawn. I think that LaShawn McCoy will go number 1 in a lot of leagues.
Oh, absolutely.
LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles right behind him. AP will never be far from number 1. But just because of the fact that although the Philadelphia offense is relatively unpredictable in terms of what it can do, it still all runs through LaShawn McCoy.
Right. It has a focus.
It does. It still all runs through him. So I definitely think that you take a quarterback late. You know, there's always some guy in either one of my leagues that takes Peyton in the first round.
Yeah.
And took Peyton in the first round last year. And actually, I think both people who took Peyton Manning were in the Super Bowl last year.
Because he went insane.
Right.
He went literally insane. He went Madden.
Do you think that Peyton Manning is going to be affected? Do you think I know the answer to this question. Peyton is getting very old.
Yes, he is.
Peyton to be 39 this year.
Something like that.
I think. You know, the Super Bowl. Any hangover from the Super Bowl with that team at all, you think?
Not Peyton Manning.
What was the final score? 45-3 or
People
something?
People stopped watching that half.
Yeah. The commercials were terrible too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Horrible Super Bowl.
Yeah. I always take quarterbacks late. I think that when you look at the list of quarterbacks, you have Cam Newton, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Stafford. What is Stafford going to do this year with Golden Tate helping him out? I'm curious about what Golden Tate will contribute to the offense. I'm curious about what the new tight end is going to contribute to the offense. Whether Reggie Bush should be able to have. He had a pretty decent year last year,
especially receiving out of the backfield. And I think that with the Lions is the cookie cutter. We have a lot of weapons teams, and so
Pettigrew, the man with no thumbs. Catch like
frying pans. So what we do have in that situation is the pressure. Now, can Matt Stafford hold up and stand up to that pressure? Can the team rally around this offense and say, all right, let's give these guys as many chances as they possibly can? Because that's what you have to do when you have a team that is that prolific or has the chance to be that prolific on offense. So you talk about the Patriots, even had, like almost the worst defense ever. Mm-hmm. There were still third down plays that you go out and get a stop because what's getting ready to happen. Can the Lions, can Matt Stafford be the guy say, oh yeah, man, as long as you give me a shot, I can go make it happen. That's not a problem.
Right.
So that's why there's such a question about drafting a guy like Matt Stafford. That's that high in the draft. But that was my point that I was trying to make earlier. You got 3 or 4 quarterbacks who are known commodities. You know what you're going to get out of them, and then you have
everybody else.
Coin flips.
Right. And I'm a believer, and mind you, I usually do better than marginally well in fantasy. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like I'm always the guy that does the most research, but I don't, I haven't won a Super Bowl in a while. But I would be happy getting 2 guys towards the back that I can interchange based on the matchup. I'm a matchup guy. I study the matchups. I look at the schedule. That schedule dictates who I'm going after during free agency, who I'm plugging in week to week. That's who I am. So if I ended up getting, let's say I ended up getting Jay Cutler and Russell Wilson. You know what I'm saying? Or I would probably take Wilson over Cutler. But think about Cutler, though. Think about Cutler. He has Alshon Jeffrey. He has Brandon Marshall. He has Matt Forte. So he has another year in that offense. Mm-hmm. So I think that he's going to do fine. I think that he'll be great.
You got to slow down with Jay Cutler because he is, again, like Matt Stafford. He's got all the weapons, right? But can he go out and say, this is what's going to happen today?
I think he lost me the Super Bowl.
He lost me a Super Bowl.
So you're bitter. That's what
I'm bitter. I'm definitely bitter. And it's because of his inconsistency.
But is he not a fantastic option as your QB2?
Yes.
To plug?
Yes. Like you said, in the right matchup. But
I think Cutler will go top.
Late in your fantasy season, stay away from Jay Cutler.
I think in a lot of leagues, I think that he'll go top 8 because of the year he had last year. And because people will consider those weapons.
Yeah. See, what I end up winning is with receivers and tailbacks who struggle early and gain momentum. Okay, so that's why my drafting, I usually try to draft as much as I can a known commodity at quarterback. Yep. As much as I can a known number 1 at wide receiver. I can kind of gamble on a couple running backs because typically, well, I don't say typically, in my draft history, my running backs have first 4 or 5 weeks marginal. I start getting scared. I might eke out a couple of wins, and then right around week 7, here we go. Boom,
that's when you kind of hit your strides. You got your free agents
and
that you picked up
next
early.
Thing you know,
and you're rolling.
I lost 2 Super Bowls back to back with that same formula. Last year I just crapped out. Last year the bottom fell out of my team, just too many injuries. But the way that I got there was because I did not lock myself into the typical fantasy draft and say running back heavy. I went quarterback, wide receiver, and I moved around with my running backs. I got lucky with some tight ends. I had a couple of sneak through weeks with some defensive performances, but it really was quarterback play and wide receiver play.
So, I'm curious to see what Phillip Rivers does this year. He's definitely not a top tier quarterback, but he had a decent year last year, scoring wise. But he definitely wasn't the flash and flare guy that you want at the top of your team.
Who's a more overrated quarterback than Phillip Rivers?
Nobody. We're talking 2000. Let's talk 2008 to 2012. Last year he did okay. Yeah. I want to see what Nick Foles does.
Yeah, now that is interesting.
That's good.
That is interesting.
Another year in that system is either going to be extremely beneficial, or it could be a fluke. I'm curious to see what RG3 comes back and does.
How many games will the Jets win?
That's another question. Woo. That's another question. Who's starting with the Jets? Geno Smith still? Geno Smith had some really good games last year, though.
He looked decent at times, but then
second year for him too.
I want to see how many games they win.
Did he start every game as a rookie? Did he start every game? I'm curious about that. We don't have it in front of us. Andy Dalton had a good year last year. Will Eli Manning bounce back at all?
No.
You think Eli's past his prime?
Who is Cam Newton? The prototype for this NFL.
Cam Newton is a video game character, by the way. When I made myself playing back in the day on Madden, I would be like, I'd be like a 6'5" quarterback that could truck your butt and could throw the ball 60 yards. And that's who Cam Newton is.
Does that art imitating life or anyway?
I don't know. Who's catching the balls for him, though? Because Steve Smith is at the Ravens now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious about that. Greg Olsen gave me some good games here and there last year with Cam Newton. Here and there, but,
they moved some things around that defense, too.
So, let's see.
Right. So so to wrapping up.
Yeah, we'll talk about quarterbacks this week. Maybe we can talk about running backs next week.
Yeah, we can talk about how we break down each category as we go along, leading up to your drafts. You can always email us, hit us up on Twitter. If you got some questions, if you got some ideas, or just give us some of your draft strategies if you're willing on putting it out there. You know what I mean? Because that's one of the things that. One of the things that we are trying to keep from doing because, we both want to be competitive. But, this is something that we all do as a community. And fantasy football is getting so large now. After NFL Red Zone came out, between NFL Red Zone and fantasy football, I don't know how people are even watching the NFL anymore.
You know what I do? Shout out to Scores, Bar and Grill up here on Grand River and Halstead. They have all the screens going. I take my tablet. I watch all the 1:00 games at the same time. It's a ritual in my house. Everybody knows that I'm going to be gone. And I could stay home and watch Red Zone, but it's just something about seeing all the games at the same time, not seeing
that's very traditional.
This highlight and that
that's very
highlight.
Traditional.
Man, it's fantastic.
I love Red Zone.
It's fantastic. And it gives you an opportunity. It gives you the opportunity to really zone in on playing styles. Because although I consider myself to be a bigger NBA fan than any other sport, I probably see more football games on a regular basis than I would see see NBA games, even though I watch a lot of NBA games. So it gives you a chance to really zone in on playing styles and things, and you're not just seeing highlights like on Red Zone. So if you have a place that's by you to do that, I would definitely suggest that you do it. Like I said, shout out to Scores. It's a great place. Food could be better, but oops.
I
shouldn't do that.
There goes your lifetime supply.
Yeah, right. So, just to let's go ahead and let's switch speeds. Let's talk about this Cormega album. You have some strong opinions about it. I've had the chance to listen to it. Cormega, New York MC, former member of the firm. Before Dr. Dre got involved, it seems as though Nature kind of usurped his role in the firm back in 1990. I want to say 1997 or 1998 when that first album came out, which I liked. I liked the firm album.
We don't refer to it as the firm album.
What do you refer to it as?
The firm flop, right?
The firm fiasco.
The firm flop.
I liked the firm album.
Yeah, it was a nice tracks on there.
Cannabis and all that.
It was a nice tracks.
Cormega dropped a couple albums back in the late 90s, early 2000s. One, The Realness or whatnot. Kind of came and went, basic
some
New York.
Features,
some cool features. But this is called Mega Philosophy. And there's a tone and a theme that's established very early on the tape. I still call them tapes. On the tape that gives you the sense that this is going to be an experience where Cormega is going to identify a number of faults in the things that he sees, not only in terms of hip hop, but in terms of African American people. he definitely believes that the two of those things are completely intertwined, which I tend to agree with.
Absolutely.
As well. That's a whole nother discussion. But one of the first songs, the first song after the intro has, I believe, Styles P on it.
Redman.
Redman is on it. I like that joint. I liked it a lot.
Yes. Always a fan of a good posse cut.
Yeah, and they don't make posse cuts no more. Right. They'll just have features.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of a good posse cut, and that was done in the vein of the posse cut, meaning it was a pop off. You know what I'm saying? Somebody come in. It wasn't like a build up to each verse, because it wasn't about who's outshining who. It was a collective sound, and I liked that album. I mean, I didn't necessarily think that each verse was, diamonds in the rough or anything, but it was a good song. It was a good rap song, and it was nice to hear all those voices together.
So back to posse cuts. What is the greatest posse cut of all time?
Okay, this is.
I'm gonna go here real quick, just
so
the people can understand where your heart is at.
All right, this is difficult. All right, I think the greatest posse cut of all time is Scenario. Now, that is not my favorite posse cut.
Okay.
All right, I can go into my Wu-Tang library.
Wu-Tang is like the master of
and
the posse
dig
cut.
out a few of those, and I can do posse cuts for a year. But that's me being a biased.
But they were a group though. That's not really.
Yeah, that's still a posse cut, bro. Triumph is still. I mean, because
Triumph is a posse cut.
That's because that is what embodies posse cut to me. Every verse is so different. You know what I mean? But it all adds to one sound.
A jungle junkie, vigilante tantrum.
That's a posse cut, right? But Scenario, I believe, is the greatest.
Scenario probably is
of all time.
That's the first one that came to mind in terms of being the great. I would go as far as to say Grand Finale.
Ooh.
DOC, NWA.
That's very nice.
Symphony.
And I was going to go with Symphony, and that is probably the Dr. J to Scenario's Michael Jordan, right? The symphony, the symphony is, a common thread throughout hip hop, and Scenario is too, but for younger taste buds, and it just stands, over time. But this crop of rappers now, I don't know if they have what it takes to make great posse cuts anymore, Rod. And the reason why is because there's no money in it.
I think that the reason that you see posse cuts kind of falling apart is because, for me, to have a true to life posse cut, I think that people need to be together in the same zone. And these days, all we have to do is send sessions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You can send a session across, through email, and somebody can pick it up or put it in a Dropbox. Somebody can pick it up, drop their verse, and keep it moving.
That's a posse cut.
So I don't always feel like the posse cut itself. Like take A-Train by ASAP.
Yeah.
Rocky. That didn't feel like a posse cut to me.
No, it's not. And like you think about a Mobb Deep track, to where like you hear guys like yelling in the background. Like, are they in the booth with him?
Right.
Yeah, there's a feeling to that.
Eye for an eye.
Yeah, like,
Ooh.
And so it came again. Our Thursday night recordings will also be accompanied by Rod's Lawn Service.
By the landscapers, yes. Shout out, Uncle Van. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's get it popping before he come this way and have it all tore. So Cormega, the posse cut being what the posse cut is.
Right.
The thing about Cormega's album that sticks out to me, first of all, it is, it's relatively short, and I like short albums nowadays. Mm-hmm. I used to really get into the whole Master P 24 tracks, you know what I'm saying? I used to kind of get into that. But it is a short album, and for me, the message is definitely one that is timely. It's definitely one that is pertinent to what is going on now. Yeah. Is it my favorite? It's not my favorite level of it's not my favorite delivery though.
No, definitely not. And I he says it in, I'm forgetting what song it is now, but it's late in the album. He found religion. Okay, and he talks about finding religion is giving him peace. The song he does about he had a problem with his family. Then he has a problem. He's talking about obviously talking about some woman, and finally I can sleep at night. You know, he's found some peace through religion, which what sounds to be something affiliated with maybe Nation of Islam, and so a lot of that aggressive. It's the way we feel. When you find something new and it's exciting to you, it's gonna come out and it's gonna come through your pores, B.
Right.
And so that's what's going on here. So he's grabbing the mic, and Cormega is a rapper, and I think he's relatively skilled rapper, and he's rapping what he is inhaling, and so a lot of that is coming out in this music. That is why I do not think it's timely. And a guy that has been through what he has been through, a guy who has seen what he's seen. A guy of his age group or experience group, because I don't think he's relatively that old. But Cormega should have a little more perspective, I think, about himself, about his current experiences, than to just be, God, I'm diminishing
accusatory.
Not just accusatory, but just, he's basically reading from a sermon. And I think that we, at this point, we don't necessarily need to hear that from a guy like Cormega. I could hear that from a young cat who's, hey, this is his first couple of swings at it. But bro, after you've seen everything that you've seen, heard everything you've heard, all you really have is the tenets of the Nation of Islam put to music. That's what I'm hearing. I mean, he's talking. I understand he's calling out people in the industry and doing all that kind of stuff, and that's cool. But the other songs are just about. I mean, we want to talk uplifting. We want to talk about black awareness and black identity, but you're doing it straight from the script. I don't know if I heard very many of Cormega's individual thoughts here. He sounded like this was his Sunday to preach. To me, it sounded like it was his time to show what he's been learning, and it just came out through the Cormega delivery, which is very unique and I think very important to hip hop.
Definitely.
But I just don't know if I heard a lot of I don't know. I didn't hear a lot of Cormega. It's the new Cormega.
The new Cormega. I think that when I talk about the delivery of the message, like I said, I do think that is very pertinent right now, in terms of the discussions that are being had across hip hop about radio, and things of that nature. I think that the conversation is there, but the delivery wasn't that fantastic. I really didn't get into the production. And I know that Large Professor had a large hand in what was going on from a production standpoint, and I just didn't really get that feel from it. A lot of it is your standard boom bap type stuff, but what else can you add to the pot? I think if that had been in place, the message probably would have been a little bit more. It probably would have been taken a little bit better from me. Like I said, I think that Cormega he represents what we talked about off mic. Was Cormega represents something. He represents an idea that there is an old guard of MCs and things that feel slighted, that feel, and this is normal, by the way. I think that when you look at a lot of black music, when generations move forward, there's this amnesia about what has come in. Although I do feel as though there's a fair amount of nostalgia about the 90s when it comes to hip hop. I think that is pretty standard for people who are really into hip hop to be able to study the 90s and to be able
There's a reference there, but I don't think we get the direct references that maybe 90s music made to the 80s.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So we don't get the direct, in the 90s we're sampling 80s music, so it was prevalent in, track to track.
Right.
So maybe we don't get those direct references, but I agree with you there.
I think that Cormega, I heard the track Industry a long time before it actually appeared on the album. And it was very, like I said, it was very pertinent to me in terms of what I see, in terms of the ideas that I have. And maybe it's just because I'm an older rap fan. Maybe that's the way that it connected with me. He's going to obviously have a lot of trouble connecting with people, but that's not necessarily what we're here to talk about. We're just here to talk about the actual quality of the music and whether or not his intended message was delivered in a quality way. And he lost me in a lot of places.
But who's narrating that track? Mr. Farrakhan.
Exactly.
And so that's what I go back to. This newly found love affair that he has with Farrakhan's teachings, or the teaching of the Nation of Islam, comes through so strong on this album.
Yeah.
It makes me think it's almost like he's a kid again. Like he's found something new, and he's expressing that.
And he wants to talk about it
in every song. And I don't know, I would think that at this age, you'd have a little more perspective. Not saying that you can't be a devout member of the nation. I'm not denigrating that whatsoever. I'm just saying.
Is there a place in hip hop for an artist that is devoutly religious? Has there ever really been, other than those that were representative of the 5% Nation?
Absolutely. But your skill speaks for itself.
The skill has to be there.
Your skill speaks for itself. We are in Michigan, Rod. There are hundreds of gospel rappers between Flint, Detroit, Ypsilanti, Pontiac. I mean, they have festivals for this stuff. And I mean, you hear some of this work. These guys have skills. They'll probably never be heard on a larger commercial level because of the topic matter, sadly, because they have the talent, but they have the talent. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. If a guy can rhyme, he can rhyme.
Right.
If you're into the topic matter, you're into the topic matter.
And I think, just as we said a couple of weeks ago on, I think it was number 2 or number 3, you have to find what you like. Yeah. And if that's what your interest is, it's out there.
I've been riding around listening to old G-Rap records. You know what I'm saying? The skill is there. And if you want to hear street music, you want to hear, crime-oriented music, G-Rap got that for you. And he will continue to have that for you. If you are into something that's more religious-driven, somebody with skill is going to bring that to you in a better way. And I think Cormega has a skill, but it just strikes me that, okay, now it's 2014, and now you want to give me an album about what you learned from the Nation of Islam.
Right. So, I liked Industry. Industry was cool.
Home.
DU, Divine Unity, with Nature. I like Nature's verse on there.
Yeah, I like the Black Rob verse on Home. That
caught my attention.
That was dope.
That caught my attention. So for me, I don't know. I give it somewhere between 3 and 3.5 mics.
That's what I'm about right there too.
Because there's a way to be able to capture that sound that you're looking for in order to convey the message. And I just didn't hear that sound.
Yeah.
So 3.5. Shout outs to Cormega.
Yeah. I'm glad we did this album, by the way.
Yeah, no doubt. Other things that kind of came out this week. At some point we'll need to talk about the Common album.
Yep.
I haven't really had a chance to truly digest it, but he's doing a lot of different things. What else is coming? I got put up on this guy named Kimbe X by Jams the Magnificent. Shout out to Jams. I want you to check that out. Okay. Kimbe X, and you guys can check that out. That's KEMBEX. I think his Twitter is Kimbe X. He also goes by Lil Loose. I ran into a mixtape by this guy. He's from Chicago. Okay. In Chicago, what I'm curious about is you have these young guys from Chicago, and so much emphasis is being put on drill music. You have drill music and you have Chance the Rapper, and they're like completely polar differences.
Yeah.
And this guy is kind of in the middle to a degree. So I'm getting into him. I'm anxious to see if he's working on anything else new. That's a mixtape from a couple years ago, but I just got put up on him. So to me, it's new. You know what I'm saying? Because for me to be put up on something that I don't know about, it must be something going on. So we'll continue to talk hip hop and talk about these albums in the context and the broader scope of what hip hop really means to American society. Again, check us out. pickandrollpodcast.com will be up in a couple of days. You can hit us on Twitter at PAR Podcast. You can also email us at pickandrollpodcast@gmail.com. Right. You can follow me at Where Is Wallace.
And I am QMB810.
He has like this coded name or whatever. Where Is Wallace? Just flat out like Where Is Waldo, I guess. So yeah, that's it.
Pick and roll.